Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Van Wiggeren, and I'm a Director of Engineering at PlanetScale. Today, I have the pleasure of presenting our product, how it works with Prisma, including some tips and tricks, and to look to the future to understand how the two of us are working together to build the best possible cloud database experience. Before I go any further, I'd love to talk about why we built PlanetScale and what it is. From a high level, we built PlanetScale because we were frustrated with what exists in the database world today. We feel that databases haven't kept up with the rest of software development. They're crufty, old, and difficult to use. We've made huge strides in how we deploy and scale applications, and databases just haven't kept up. They're difficult to scale, they're difficult to change, and they're extremely difficult to debug when something goes wrong. If any of this sounds familiar, you probably understand why we built PlanetScale. One of the most important decisions that we made was building the product on top of Vitesse. If you're not familiar, Vitesse was built at YouTube to handle the outrageous scale of the website. Vitesse allows MySQL to scale out in immense ways that weren't possible before. For example, one Vitesse instance, one PlanetScale database, can scale to thousands, if not tens of thousands of connections without worrying about adding proxies or bouncers in front of it. And the best part is all of these code paths are proven at scale. These aren't new technologies being developed right now. They're already running on some of the hyperscale websites that you're familiar with. You can sleep soundly at night knowing that other companies have paved the way, along with the Vitesse team, at making sure that these technologies will work no matter how big you grow. But underneath, it's still the database that you love. It still looks like MySQL. If you're using Prisma, Rails, or any other technology, you can rest easy knowing that you won't have to make massive modifications to your application in order for it to work with PlanetScale. You won't have to learn a new type of SQL or learn how to deploy a new type of database. It just looks like MySQL, but it's much better. We call this zero to scale. The user experience that we've built at PlanetScale will help you get going from day one, but can help carry you as far as you need to go. Whatever growth you're planning, whatever growth you anticipate, don't worry. PlanetScale is right there with you. And we've done it all while building for developers. We're software engineers, and we've used all the databases around. We know how they tick, and we know why they're difficult to use. So you can trust us to make sure we've built a product that you'll love to use and that you'll love to keep scaling with. The best example of this is the concept that we introduced of database branching. Fundamentally, the way that we change code and the way that we change databases is incredibly different. With code, it's very easy to create a new branch and start risk-free experimentation. With databases, you have to stand up a new instance, copy the schema over, get seed data, or copy the data over. It can be quite a bit of time before you can just get to experimenting with the database. What if it wasn't that hard? What if creating a new branch of your database was as easy as typing a single command? I'm happy to tell you that it can be. With PlanetScale, you have developer-focused workflows that never leave the command line. If you want to experiment, change a row, remove or add a whole table, all you have to do is use the pscale command, create a new branch from your production database, and you can start experimenting. These commands here show a complete deployment workflow. A user is able to create that new branch, add an entire new table for the feature that they're adding, create a deploy request, examine the difference between the database that they were experimenting with and their production database, and then go deploy it right to production. And the best part is those deploys are safe, and those deploys will not impact production negatively. With PlanetScale's non-blocking schema changes, you can trust that when you click that deploy button or run that command, behind the scenes, we're making sure that the schema that you have and the schema that you created are compatible. There are no problems, and we're deploying it in the background in a way that won't impact performance and won't bring the website down. This is all done without writing a single line of code on your end. It's just part of the deployment flow of using PlanetScale. That probably sounds pretty cool. I'd love to show it to you in this demo. Now, I'd love to show off that same workflow we just talked about, but using Prisma. Down here on the command line, I've created my database and I'm going to go ahead and create my development branch to add the blog. I'm also going to create a shadow database, which will help Prisma understand the difference between the two branches. Up here in the code, I've got my Prisma setup configured. I have my two models, a post and a user, and then I've got my database set up. As you can see, according to Prisma, I'm just using the MySQL provider, and then I've got some optional configuration over here in PlanetScale mode, which I'll talk about more a little bit later. I've also got my database and shadow database set up to copy from the environment. And if we go over to this, we can see I've just got it configured to point at localhost. That's because I'm going to be using the pscale CLI to create secure tunnels to both of these databases so that I never need to worry about passwords or any other authentication. We're going to go ahead and spin up that proxy I was just talking about. This will securely tunnel on port 3302 back to my add blog branch. And this will tunnel port 3301 back to my shadow branch. Once these are up, I can go ahead right here and I can go ahead and run db push. This will tell Prisma to go out to PlanetScale and take a look at the difference between the two database branches. Prisma will spin up, connect to the proxy, and it'll say, congratulations, your database is now in sync. This has just gone to our development branch in PlanetScale and synced the state of my Prisma models with that development branch. This hasn't deployed my schema to production, but it is part of the overall code workflow and database branch workflow that we have here at PlanetScale. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a deploy request from my add blog branch to my main branch. This goes out to PlanetScale and it says, hey, I just added this schema in add blog. I want to see what it would look like if I were to merge it back to main. This is very similar to a merge request or a pull request if you were writing code. Much like that, I actually can go ahead and look at a diff and see what's the difference between those two schemas. As we can see, it's pure addition. I've created a post table and I've created a users table. Because I have that deploy open, I can actually just merge it. So let's go ahead and click deploy. This goes out and says, hey, PlanetScale, I want you to use your non-blocking schema migration, and I want you to make my main production database look like this development branch that I just checked out. We can see what that looks like by hopping onto a MySQL shell, again through the pscale command line, which will connect us to PlanetScale. And I can go ahead and see we created those two tables. And that's it. Every schema migration that you do can be as easy as running these sets of commands and deploying them to PlanetScale. There's no need to worry about downtime deploys. There's no need to worry about what's going to happen when larger changes are done. PlanetScale will handle making sure that your database looks the way that you want. It's this easy. That demo was great, but only showed us adding a little bit of schema. Let's take a look at what happens when we want to modify our schema. Right here, as we can see, I still have my main branch, which I just merged some schema into. I still have my shadow branch, but I've created a published at branch. And that's because instead of having a Boolean to determine when I've published a post, I want to create a timestamp so that I can schedule things in the future and so that I know the time that my documents were published at. So we're going to go ahead, or we're going to change published to published at. We're going to make it a date time, and we're going to make sure that the default time is now. Just like that, I've updated my Prisma models. Let's take a look at what it looks like if I want to change those in PlanetScale. Over here, I'm going to repoint that proxy on port 3302 to point at my new branch. I don't have to update my Prisma configuration because it's already pointed at localhost 3302. All it's going to do is get the difference. Over here, I'm going to rerun db push. Now that I've started that proxy, let's see what happens. It's connected, and now my database is in sync. It's now going to look at generating. Probably should have skipped the generators, but that's okay. Generated the Prisma client. Let's go ahead and do the same thing we did before. Let's go ahead and create a deploy request. So instead of using the add blog branch, we're going to use the published app branch. Let's create that deploy request in PlanetScale, and let's go ahead and let's get a diff. What do you say? So this is going to be deploy request number 2. We're going to go ahead and we're going to ask PlanetScale, hey, what looked different? And look at that. Just like we saw before, instead of just adding this table, I've gone ahead and removed the tiny int, which is how it maps a Boolean, and we've created a date time with the default of the current timestamp. Just as we did before, I can go ahead and I can deploy my deploy request number 2, and PlanetScale has gone and done it. Let's go ahead, go look at the shell, hop into that MySQL shell, and we'll do a describe post table. And look at that. No more published, and we've got published ID as a date time. Again, all your schema changes could be this easy. That's the power of PlanetScale. Let's take a look at what this looks like on the website. As we can see, I'm in the PlanetScale application looking at my Prisma database. If I go over to look at the branches tab, I can see I've got my production branches over here, the main branch that we've been merging things into, and I can go ahead and take a look at my schema. This is a representation of what my schema looks like today. We can see the published at datetime that I changed is reflected here, as well as all of the other schema we've created. We can also go back to the home page and we can take a look at the deploy requests that have happened in this database. The 2 that we did during this demo are both here. I can look at the add blog deploy request, which tracks the addition of these 2 schemas. Notice the old style published. And I can also go back and look at the second deploy request, where we modified that schema slightly. This has the same diff that we saw in the command line, and a summary of what happened. It looks like it took a total of 8 seconds to get that merged, which could be faster, but I can handle. Of course, if there was a bunch of data in the table and we were making larger modifications, this might take a little bit longer, but it's pretty much instant right now. As I start to use this table, as I start to read and start to write, we also get some stats here. We can see the query load as well as how much storage we're using. Right now, I don't have a lot of posts. I think I need to scale my website up a little bit. So I'm only using 1 megabyte of storage. Hopefully, you all have a lot more to store than that. We'd love to get your data on PlanetScale. All right, let's recap what we've seen so far. I showed a little bit about the history of PlanetScale and why it exists. Then I gave a demo of using PlanetScale and Prisma together to create a brand new database, seed it with some schema, and then modify that schema all through the Prisma client and the PlanetScale command line. We went over how that can be done safely and securely, time and time again, in an environment that looks a lot more like code modification than it does changing a database. We also showed what those processes and steps look like in the PlanetScale UI to show what we think the best practices are around how to change your schema. I hope this has been edifying and informative, and everyone is ready to give PlanetScale a try. We're really excited to have more and more people sign up and try it out while we're in beta. Your feedback is essential to making sure that we build a product that all of us want to use. In that vein, we're working very closely with the Prisma team to enhance the experience. There are a number of blockers and pieces of friction right now that make using PlanetScale and Prisma just a little bit more difficult than we would like. A very good example of this is making sure that Prisma and PlanetScale's support of foreign keys don't cause people to run into issues. Right now, there's a PlanetScale mode flag that needs to be enabled so that Prisma won't try and add foreign key constraints, as PlanetScale's online schema migration flow doesn't support them. We'd love to continue to evolve how the Prisma client tracks this so that it feels a lot more natural to turn these off. And we'd love to continue to add documentation and resources to help people understand why PlanetScale has made this choice. There are also a couple of features that we'll be adding in the very near future to make using these 2 products together much easier. The biggest one is connection strings. Right now, the primary method of connecting to a PlanetScale database is using our CLI, which creates a proxy. This is awesome for local development because it means you never have to reconfigure your client. all you have to do is pick the database and the branch and create a secure tunnel to that database. This is encrypted over the internet. It means that you can easily swap connections no matter what. However, this also causes some difficulty. In serverless and other deployed environments, it can be very difficult or impossible to run this proxy alongside your application. PlanetScale is acutely aware of this blocker, and we're working on adding connection strings to the product that you'll be able to copy and paste from the UI, API, or CLI. This will enable you to safely deploy your application and connect to PlanetScale just like any other database as a service. I don't have an exact date for these, but just know it is incredibly important to us, and we're working on them as quickly as we can. We're also working on tracking Prisma migration metadata. This is metadata that Prisma adds to the database every time it runs a migration on your behalf. This allows it to check what's already been run and allows it to make sure that things are functioning properly. Right now, the merge process doesn't copy that data from your development branch to your main branch, or when creating a new branch, from your main branch to your development branch. PlanetScale currently has this feature for Rails, where it will look at the data in the schema migrations table and copy it around. Very soon, we'll be enabling this for Prisma as well to make sure that the migration flow works as you would expect it. Hopefully, you'll hear more from both PlanetScale and Prisma about this very soon. There are a number of other smaller considerations that both of our teams are tracking. In this issue, 7292 in the Prisma repository, there are a list of current blockers and workarounds and/or processes that we're working on to make them better. Both of our teams check this very frequently and are actively working on making sure that we can reduce this list to as small as possible. We care very deeply about this being a good experience for both users, and we're very excited about making sure that PlanetScale and Prisma work incredibly well together. As I mentioned earlier, we would also love to hear your feedback. The more people that we have on PlanetScale during our beta period, the more users and the more we understand about what people want out of a developer-focused database. We love hearing from developers, and we want to hear from you. Please use PlanetScale. Please write to support. Please tweet at us, or whatever method of communication works best for you. We would love to know how you're using PlanetScale, how you want to use PlanetScale, and if there's anything standing in between what you want to do and what you're able to do. Thank you so much for your time. Again, my name is Nick Van Wiggeren. This is my Twitter handle. Please feel free to follow up with any feedback, questions, or concerns. I would personally love to hear from you, and I know the rest of PlanetScale would as well. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a thoughtful and thorough introduction to PlanetScale. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I must say that I've been personally excited about PlanetScale, I think since your announcement back in May. Yeah, I think we're going to do a live Q&A, and a quick reminder to our viewers that you can drop your questions in the Prisma Day channel on Slack. Nick, are you ready to take some questions?
Let's go for it.
All right, let's do it. So I saw that you have quite a generous free tier that includes 3 free databases with 10 gigabytes of storage each. What should developers know about this?
Yeah, I think that the message that we want to send to developers is that PlanetScale is a place to build. And in my talk, I said, I think 0 to IPO is kind of how we think about it. And we just want to make sure that we really hit that 0 mark well. We want to make sure that when people come and they're looking to start off, they know that PlanetScale is something that they can actually build a real production service or real production website on, and we will be with them the entire journey. And we strongly believe that the most important part of that is helping people get started out. So we think our free tier is generous. We're very happy to be able to offer that generous free tier. And we plan on continuing to do that as PlanetScale continues to evolve, because we know that what developers want is a powerful database. And the fact that we can offer it for free, we hope will hook them and make them not want to look anywhere else.
Got it. So sort of like referring back to Martina's talk previously, which talked about some of the difficulties with connection management, how does PlanetScale work in serverless environments where there's a lot of database connection churn?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And that's something that we're really proud of hoping being able to solve in PlanetScale as time goes on. Because PlanetScale is built on top of Vitesse, and because it uses some kind of technology from other hyperscale companies, we've actually been able to largely avoid needing to have the user really think about connections at all. We've seen, single Vitesse instances support 10,000, 20, 30, 40,
Wow.
50,000 connections at one time. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going out and saying, I'm gonna throw 50,000 connections at my free tier PlanetScale database today. But we're lucky that essentially we have our own built-in kind of, what you would say PG bouncer or serverless MySQL that can handle kind of combining all of those connections down into something that MySQL can handle. So it's one of those areas where even as we build out the serverless experience, and I talked about, in my talk, some of the pieces that we're adding to make it easier and easier, the kind of core infrastructure here is really well set up for the serverless style of deployment, where you have a ton of nodes connecting to a single database. And you need to be able to do that as you deploy and kind of not have to worry about setting up your own infrastructure to handle the database's limitations.
Right. Right. And you mentioned that PlanetScale is built on Vitesse, which looks just like MySQL. Are there any differences between Vitesse and MySQL that developers should be aware of?
That's a great question as well. And we go through quite a bit of work to make sure that Vitesse and MySQL are as compatible as possible. We run through test suites for common frameworks like Django, Rails, Rust, and Prisma to make sure that what works on MySQL also works on PlanetScale and works on Vitesse. Sometimes you may run into kind of character, like string parsing differences and things like that, and Vitesse will error when maybe MySQL would be able to kind of handle it. And MySQL can, and Vitesse, and PlanetScale will get a little bit less compatible as we move into like sharding and things like that. But for the getting started experience, we care very much about making sure that what runs on MySQL runs on PlanetScale and runs on Vitesse as well. A kind of quick example about that, as we're building the PlanetScale website, kind of our API and stuff like that, we actually currently, deploy it on top of PlanetScale, but we also use local MySQLs to test and develop to make sure that, it's kind of compatible with both. And that's a great kind of check for us because it makes sure, does our own website and the code that we write work on both, a kind of standard vanilla MySQL and a standard Vitesse. So I look forward to hearing, and I'm sure people will run into slight differences. No system is one-to-one mapping, but by and large, we hope that from day one, people can start with existing applications or new applications, and they really can feel like it's MySQL.
I see. So does that mean that if you say I have an application that is built with Vitesse, that you can locally develop with just a MySQL instance, or what is sort of your recommendation there?
Yeah, we want more people to be doing cloud development on top of PlanetScale. We would like to see people actually, we'd like for ourselves to be able to get rid of the local MySQL, to be able to get rid of the MySQL in CI and actually use PlanetScale everywhere. But it's sort of a phased approach. There's latency concerns. We have people who work on this product all over the world. If you're in Europe and you have a West Coast USA database, for example, the latency there would make development incredibly painful. And so as we make PlanetScale more global, ironically, no pun intended, and as we get farther and farther and farther, we're hoping to be able to make it easier and easier and easier to get rid of local development entirely. But right now, a lot of us are still kind of splitting time between both. And I wouldn't recommend maybe going all in quite yet, but dipping a toe in and going further and further and further as we add more features and things like that.
Got it. Thank you. Now, in the demo, you showcased how easy it is to create database branches with PlanetScale and then deploy those branches back into the main branch. I can imagine that this opens up quite a wide world of opportunities that includes like PR previews that include a database. But more broadly, how do you sort of envision migration workflows in environments where a lot of these application deployments are handled by continuous integration and continuous deployment?
This is a fantastic question. And I think this is an area where we really can innovate in the near future. So part of the reason we built the branching flow and part of the reason we built the schema migration flow is to match the rest of the software development lifecycle, is to match how people write code. Imagine if you had to change your code the way you change your database today, with like every line that needed to be changed was a process that needed to be ran. So we're exploring a lot of different areas. A really good example, I think, of something we'd love to do in the near future is tying in GitHub Actions with PlanetScale. So if you can run your application's migration script in a branch, you can send that off to PlanetScale and ask PlanetScale if there are any differences. If so, automatically open a deploy request and automatically merge that deploy request when the pull request is merged. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of tie PlanetScale in with the rest of the CI/CD workflow. And that's something that we're very interested in doing more and more as the product kind of evolves and as we figure out how our users are using it and kind of what they need.
I see. Thank you. And we're just about to run out of time, but maybe you could just quickly sort of share what can we expect in the coming year from PlanetScale?
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple of features and things like that we're looking at adding immediately. And a lot of what we're looking at adding in the next few months is just making it easier to get started. So we want to help people connect directly to PlanetScale so they don't have to worry about how to deploy PlanetScale. We want to help make it so easy to get started that, PlanetScale is the clear choice. And then we just want to continue to add features that, people expect from databases. We have a lot of people who are very knowledgeable about databases, and we want to extend their knowledge to everyone using PlanetScale. So how are your queries working, kind of query insights and things like that, all the way over to making sure that, as you're using PlanetScale, we can kind of help you grow and help you scale out. So there's a lot on the horizon, but one of the things we care about the most as we do all of this is kind of developer happiness and making sure it works for developers. So everything we set out for is making it easier to get started with PlanetScale, easier to grow, easier to make sense of what's going on at PlanetScale and things like that.
Nick, it's been a real pleasure having you. Thank you so much for presenting and for the live Q&A, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks for having me. Have a great rest of your day.